Hello, and welcome to this new episode of Actual Spirit. Today, we're going to talk about voyeurism and exhibitionism on the internet, the libidinal economy of the spectacle of instanternity, with Bara Kolenc. Bara, welcome. Bara is a Slovenian philosopher, and she's a researcher at the philosophy department of Ljubljana, and also currently president of the Aufhebung, International Association, Hegelian Association, and also a member of the Ljubljana School. So, Bara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And the first question I would like to ask you about this paper is, what was your initial motivation or inspiration for writing it and researching this topic?
So I'm actually interested in exploring how the subjectivity functions through the shift brought about the digital, because I firmly believe that libidinal economy is intertwined with social economy. So I believe my work is also deep down political. So this is for sure one reason. The other is, of course, I won't say I'm particularly interested into field of vision, or I don't know, in the scopic drive. I just think right now at this moment, this is the scopic element, the element of vision in the digital virtual is prevailing. So this means that exploring the two main mechanisms of desire and of drive within the field of vision, within the scopic field, means also exploring the prevailing mechanisms of libidinal economy on internet. So I believe that this research into this field brought me the most usable like conclusions to how subjectivity functions within the digital. So
yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of the paper, which I always took to be something so fundamental about philosophy in the 21st century, especially Zizek'ian philosophy, is that Lacan says that truth is structured like a fiction. And then you talk about the actual reality, like physical reality, and the digital reality, which is indeed, like you said, also mediated by the scopic drive in forms that we will go into later. So you actually say that whatever we might think, this is how I read it at least, whatever we might think of the pre-digital reality, that's actually a myth.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
What do you actually mean by this?
It's very much connected to how in psychoanalysis the production of reality is understood. So there are many layers. For example, our psychic reality, for example, our conscious reality, is constantly has been constantly reproduced in a certain retroactive sense, which means that, for example, if we take language, like we always, as we announce something like a sentence, only at the end of the sentence, or at the end of what, like of a certain part of what we are announcing, at the point of suture, the meaning of what we are saying is produced in a certain retroactive sense. So this is one thing. The other thing is how our like memory works. As we know, Freud realized at one point in his research that the traumatic event is not necessarily a real event. So first he thought, like, so in the first like years of his research, Freud thought that the point of the analysis is to dig out this traumatic core, the event that happened in the childhood of the patient, and that this is then the path to make this memories on this event conscious, to put away resistances. But at one point he realized that this event, the traumatic event, maybe never ever happened actually, that it could be made up by the patients retroactively. And one very important revelation on this path of Freud is he noticed that there exist certain memories which are called screen memories, which means that I have so what I remember as an event from when I was 3 years old might be actually produced at the point where I was 5 years old, and maybe somebody told me about this event, and I took it as mine. So I'm producing my memory, my history retroactively, which means that that reality as it was, this traumatic event, the reality of the traumatic event is actually a mythical thing. A myth for Lacan means something that is that doesn't possess objective reality, but functions as an origin of things, like myths does, like myths do. But myths are always also, for example, in religion, or they are produced as something that reaffirms a certain story of the origin, although the origin never existed. So this would be this is the meaning of so in the parallel to this, we could say that today's reality is so much intertwined with the digital virtual that we cannot speak of pre-digital reality otherwise than in a sense of a myth, like it existed once, but it cannot be posted something that we are living in this in the moment when we talk about it.
Yeah, so that immediately tells me that wherever we are now, we're stuck with it, and we have to deal with it. So like any kind of thinking that wants to get rid of the digital virtual or just demonizes it is automatically you can automatically see that that's not going to help anyone, basically, with this retroactive suturing of meaning, what you said.
Yeah, this is definitely an illusion. Also, this romanticism of real life, of return to the roots, to the pre-digital world is, of course, impossible.
Right. So, and to go back to Lacan's quote of truth is structured like a fiction, I think you've done a good job of explaining this in terms of retroactivity of meaning and in terms of the origin story.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is structured like a fiction. Okay, this is also a complex thing, but yeah, what is behind this Lacan's statement is that before Saussure, before structural linguistics, in the so-called classical linguistics, there was a natural assumption that the sign, for example, a word, correlates to the thing. For example, a word chair correlates to the physical chair. Therefore, so what was serving as a kind of guarantee for the truth was that what I was saying had some proofs in the outside reality. This could be, of course, physical reality, also, or our psychic reality. For example, like word imagination was like presumed to have a correlation, a natural correlation to what imagination as such is. But since Saussure, this correlation was cut with this proposition of arbitrariness of science, which means that there is no natural correlation between the sign and the thing. And with this, it means that okay, with this we get, of course, that the relation of science is only, so how we get value, how we get meaning is only relational. So we have, for example, word chair, and we have another word, I don't know, shirt. So arbitrariness of science means that it was there is no reason why chair is called a chair, a shirt is called a shirt. This it is the connection between the thing and the notion, the sign, is arbitrary. But because the language as such is a social thing, it's actually a social agreement. Of course, we cannot use, for example, a word chair for example, a table. It's a certain agreement. So although the signs are arbitrary, they are not how to say, we cannot just make up how we will use them. So it means that there is certain necessity inscribed into this. No? So okay, so coming to the question of truth is structured as fiction. So because we lose this affirmation of truth from this natural proposition of coincidence of word and or sign and reality. This means that truth is totally relying only on the signifying chain. So the and for Lacan, we have speech, and truth is something that is produced within speech itself. So it is not something that relates to the outside reality. So there is no thing as objective reality, or so. For example, the big thing about deep fake, the post-truth, about and this thing is becoming more and more real with of course with the digital virtual, where we can not really discern, or we can less and less discern what is real in the sense of some sort of actual objective reality, and what is only artificial in the sense of digitally reproduced or changed reality. And this is becoming so less and less discernible, because the digital technology is better and better. So, for example, in this moment, I could be a scammer. My image could be taken by a scammer, and he could even mimic my voice and make this image, like make gestures. So I might not be Bara, who I believe I am, but maybe I'm also lying, maybe I'm a scanner, I'm joking at this point. But the entire thing about discerning these two realities for Lacan wouldn't make sense, because for Lacan, it makes so the truth as such, it is a construction. It is made up. It is not something that has that could be. It actually, it's not. It's not like. Physical reality that could be checked up by facts or experiments or things like this.
Right.
And with this, he doesn't say that truth is a fiction. It just says that there is no difference between how you structure truth and how you structure fiction, no? And what for Lacan is beyond truth, which operates within the level of language, is real, the real. This has another ontological place, no? Ontological dimension.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Zizek's quote. I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something like, "Beyond the fiction of reality is the reality of fiction." So
beyond the fiction of reality is the reality of fiction. Yeah, that's very good, good one. No, so we are now talking, and we are in this fiction of reality.
Yeah.
But
this fiction in turn has a real effect.
Precisely, it has real effect. Yeah.
To go on the scopic field and the scopic drive, because with this understanding of truth and fiction not only being blurry, but there's a certain precise technical Lacanian language to this and how this functions. I want to go on the question: what is the scopic field and the scopic drive? Given what we've said about truth.
Yeah. Okay, scopic drive is what it's the drive that operates within a field of vision. It's one of the drives detected by Freud and worked on by him. So Freud's proposition is that scopic drive functions within the ambivalence of voyeurism and exhibitionism.
Right.
It's ambivalent. Drives as such are ambivalent. But this is one. Besides the ambivalent drive of sadism and masochism, this couple of voyeurism and exhibitionism is the most elaborated, worked on by Freud, because he says that the majority of human like sexual arousement is happening in the field of vision. So it's very important aspect of how our desire works.
Right. And this is today extremely important because we're, of course, all being mediated by this digital virtual surface.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go into voyeurism and exhibitionism in the paper, you say the subject is presented as other than he is, and what one shows him is not what he wishes to see.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
What does this
That's it. This mean? This is like a Lacanian elaboration on the scopic drive. He says that subject's operation in the field of vision always includes allure. So this is something similar, like with the idea that within language, the truth is structured as a fiction. So within a field of vision, there is always this function of allure. There's always, so we always miss what we really want to see. But the thing is that, of course, we know that desire is an insatiable thing. You know? So the desire has this structure that it always desires something else that it gets. This is the basic formula of desire. And that's how, for example, desire is differentiated from need. Need can be satisfied, for example, as hunger or any other physical need, while desire cannot be satisfied. So it's always so you get what you desire, but in this very moment when you get it, you realize that this was not it, that you actually desire something else or something or more. So the subject, the psychoanalytical subject, is always the subject that appears at the wrong place, appears and disappears at the same moment. He can never meet up with itself. No, so and it's the same thing with enjoyment. No? So enjoyment has this is not it structure as its like basic predisposition. No? So because we have this ambivalent drive, so voyeurism and on the one hand and exhibitionism on the other hand, and we have to know that for Freud, we are always both now. So the thing that the drives are ambivalent means that we are all of us, we are exhibitionists and voyeurists. We don't make two camps, no. Although of course one can have one more explicit or more. However, okay, so actually Lacan uses this example, this sentence for love. In love, there is a certain reproach used by loving person who is in love, or who has his desire engaged for the other. So for the exhibitionist, I'm sorry. Sorry. So this person who has this relation of love uses this reproach. Sorry, you never look at me from the place from where I see you. I will explain this later. And at the same time, what I want to see, what you show me is, what you show me is never what I want to see. So it's always this. So the objective of love, it's ungraspable. So that's why love for Lacan is also impossible thing. No? So I want to see. I want to see something in you, but what you show me is never it. No? And on the other hand, I want you to look at me as I see myself, but it goes through another position. So you never look at me from the point from where I see you. So okay, this is a little bit complex, but also very crucial. So for Lacan, and I'm taking like his predisposition here, we have the subject is structured through two forms of identification. One is imaginary, the other is symbolic. So imaginary is, of course, we all know, seeing our image in the mirror. This is how we imagine who we imagine that we are. So for Lacan, this was discovered in his early stage of research, the mirror stage. So a child has, and this is also interesting because it's also for the animals, we could say it's the same thing. So we never see ourselves as a whole. So we, without a mirror, of course, we see parts of the body. We see actually our body as part of the environment. Only a mirror gives us the picture of the body parts which are glued together. So only in the mirror we see ourselves, and we have this aha effect. Aha, this is who I am now. This is I. So this is this imaginary identification. The symbolic identification works on the level of language. It is where the subject recognizes itself in the signifying chain. So to simplify, we could say that it's at the points where the subject as a linguistic form, like for example, I, appears in the language. But actually, it is not only in this, how you call this? However, in this word I, or not only in the performatives, in the sense when I claim something that I do, for example, I swear, it's actually everywhere. So the subject is inscribed in the language constantly at points, exactly at points of the suture that I mentioned before. So, and one very important thing is that even though the individual or person might assume that his imaginary identification is who he is, this is only a fantasy, because the imaginary is actually structured through the symbolic. So, the entire imaginary scale is just an effect of the symbolic. So Lacan explains this with the picture, or with the example of phantom bucket. This is a visual illusion that was optical illusion that was presented in the end of the 19th century. And here we have okay, so we have in reality, no, we have a vase on the table which is empty, and below we have the bucket. And then we have this concave mirror, and because in the concave mirror transmits the rays like this into this diagonals, we see in the mirror this optical illusion that actually the bucket is in the vase. And this picture, bucket in the vase, is actually the imaginary. For example, for Lacan, the field, the level of the imaginary. So this is an illusion. Bucket is not in the vase, and the position of the subject of the symbolic identification is the position of the one which can move, for example, the table, and which discovers this illusion, or demasks this illusion. So it's the position of the one who forms the illusion and who actually demasks it. So the entire paper, actually, my paper deals with this split between this position of the subject, which is the symbolic position, and the position of the I, of the ego, which functions on this imaginary scale.
Right, so we have the ideal ego, which would be the identification with the specular image in the mirror.
Yeah.
View yourself as a whole instead of a fragmented being with different limbs and being in the environment. Then we, of course, we're all familiar with the super ego, and then we have the ego ideal. So you explained before that the ideal ego functions based on imaginary identification, like in an image. And you also talk about this scopic drive in terms of narcissism. So I believe you take this from Freud, is that there's a primary narcissism, which is autoerotic and is really like based on this mirror stage. And then there's a secondary narcissism, which is would be like an actually pathologically narcissistic adult, which is kind of yes, this person isn't really correct. It really is at a loss on how to mediate the ideal ego, and the superego.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I understand it is that the pathological narcissist fails to symbolically identify, so he cannot get in line with the chain of
Yes.
signifiers and latch on to some kind of desire, and identify with that in a certain form. So he's stuck between forcing to like show everyone that he's really the ideal ego that he is. Obviously, he fails in this, and therefore he's tormented by the superego constantly.
Yeah.
Now, I think when I look in my daily life, I think this is a pervasive phenomenon, that a lot of people are dealing with this, that they are stuck in this, and they are completely losing themselves in the exhibitionism or of social media. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts about this? And do you, especially in regards to voyeurism and exhibitionism?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, this is a, like, as I say, pervasive phenomenon. What I wanted to show is that structurally, as soon as we use, for example, now a webcam, as soon as we use this selfie camera, we are, because of the many phenomena that I go through. One, for example, one is that the screen is turning into, the screen is taking the position, the function of the mirror, which is like, which means that we are talking to other people while at the same time constantly looking in the mirror, ourselves in the mirror. So this is one thing. So which means that all communication, human communication, through digital virtual, most of this human communication turns into self-representation. And many other things. I think we'll talk about them. But the thing is that structurally, because we are operating in the field of vision, we are operating in the field of an image, we are caught into this narcissistic, voyeuristic, exhibitionistic interplay. And because what I also wanted to show is, okay, another conceptual split that we have is the field of vision, so the field of vision as such doesn't necessarily mean that this is the field of an image. This is where I correct the board in a sense. So image is just the field of image, the realm of image is just one part of the field of vision. So, and the problem of today's use of computers, of today's social media use, is that we are focused solely on this part, which is the part of an image. And this image is so pervasive that it supports the exhibitionistic part, especially, which is the part that that represents a secondary exhibitionism, secondary narcissism. So what I wanted to say is that the thing, okay, so okay, I'll start from another point of view. So I believe that from a really a zoom out, if you make a zoom out, it's all the capitalistic machine. It's the machine of accelerated growth. It's a machine of speeding up, of production, which means that we as human beings, as working human beings, we are put in a more and more squeezed time. So we are forced to produce, to work the senseless work, like constantly. But on the other hand, the digital as such brings a total different temporality. That's why I called it instanternity. It's a temporality of the moment, of the now. So instead of the temporality of a duration, which we had, like, I'm talking about the perception of time, not in time, it's an objective thing. But instead of the perceiving time as a duration, as something that flows from the past to the future, we are perceiving time in the digital virtual as something that is happening now, which means that this reality, so and we can see this, for example, in this swapping or scrolling. So we want the next thing. We don't have, and it's also teachers see with kids that they don't have much attention. They can't stand duration anymore, or less and less focus. So one thing is that idea of instants that are constantly replacing each other. Like, so the next, for example, on Instagram or on especially on Snapchat. So the next one. But of course, this is in a sense illusion, because all those moments are like they are something that disappear. So on Snapchat we have a thing that that stays there for 24 hours, then it disappears. But actually it stays. So those moments with the camera are captured in an image, so they get their materiality. So on the other hand, we have this obsessive catching of moments of our life that are all now gaining materiality through images. So we have millions, thousands, millions of images of the moments of our lives. And this is a certain material accumulation of those things. No? So, which means that because there are so many moments that are captured in those images that are put on internet, this is a huge container of millions of lives, of millions of moments. And out of these moments, there can be another like unimaginable number of different successions, different stories, different histories made out of it. So which means that our history is something that we can make anew each moment. We can make it up, or we can combine, I mean, those moments in different ways and so on. So, and that's why I think that the entire container of those images on internet or internet as such functions very much as a unconscious, because because for Freud, unconscious doesn't know time. For Freud, unconscious is timeless. So the idea of temporality is a conscious thing. So now with the internet, this unconscious is made conscious. Is made a reality that we perceive. So we have this strange perversion of the unconscious, of the time of the unconscious material, which is now made present and physical in a sense. No, so but you asked me something else.
Yeah. So, well, one question I have in regards to this is that I can go for my own use of social media, but this is also what you see around. This is basically, whatever it be, Snapchat or doesn't matter. It's basically based on symmetry, right?
On symmetry.
You're putting forth yourself as a symmetrical image. Of course, there's all these kinds of filters you can put, so you don't see.
Yeah. Symmetry is when.
So this is, it's like there's this hunt that, of course, fails to really latch onto the ideal ego and show to everyone, like, hey, this is my ideal ego. Acknowledge it for what it is, or like this is the exhibitionist expression, right? Like, see me from the place that I see you being in. So immediately, what comes up for me here is that, you don't want to be seen in a manner that the other is above you. It's the opposite, right? It's like the narcissist wants to see himself above the other. So the place in which I see you, I want you to look at me, which is like the place of the slave, basically. It's like,
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
There's so you talk about there's two functions of the gaze in the scopic field. So one is the elusive object A in the field visible of the gaze, and the other is the function of the big other, which is like watching over me. And you say that it's a referential point for the subject's symbolic identification in his ego ideal. So there's like it's not that we that the ego ideal doesn't completely exist anymore when we enter the digital spaces with this,
of course it exists. Yeah.
Ideal ego. But how do you then what is your view on that? Do you think we all become more exhibitionistic because of the digital? Do you think
not because of the digital, because the digital as such currently, because we're using screens, operates in the field of vision, because the screen itself has this the screen itself demands the gaze, and it demands light. So the two elements that define the field of vision are the gaze and the light. And because the screen needs the gaze and needs the light, if we shut down, if we don't watch it, it doesn't have function. So and if you shut it down, if it's not enlightened, it doesn't exist. It's a dead thing. So that's why right now we are using screen to access digital virtual, which means that we are operating, entire digital virtual is operating within the field of vision. If we were writing a text, but within the digital virtual, which is now, because we are using screen, operating within the field of vision, we have, of course, also images which are pervasive and which are very prevalent maybe, or at least present to the same extent as text. This is another thing that why the digital virtual is so much so strong now in the field of vision. But I think that soon, I'm almost sure that we will soon, because the technology develops so quickly, we will come to the stage that we will not need screens anymore. So we'll come to the stage of, as we see, of a direct connection of brain and computer. Like they already managed to make a sort of detector of thought through fMRI technology that scans thought and makes it into a text directly. Or, for example, Elon Musk was allowed 1 week ago to put chips in human brain. So I think the future of the merging of the two realities is going beyond our use of screens. And maybe at that point, the entire thing with exhibitionism, voyeurism will not be so topical as it is at that point. No? But okay, so now how narcissism works within this, and ego ideal and ideal ego. So the field, so the image, the field of image within the field of vision, the realm of image, is the realm of our imaginary identification. But imaginary identification is always controlled, as I said before, with the inscription of the subject in the symbolic. So it doesn't mean that the big other doesn't exist. It just means that we are caught in the illusion or caught in the illusion that this is who we are. And the thing that you mentioned before is crucial. So the problem with secondary narcissism, the so-called pathological narcissism, is that it fails in the symbolic identification. So, which means that symbolic identification is identification with the big other, identification with the symbolic symbolic network, identification with the law. It's actually integration of law and also of moral law, of rules that structure the society. So this is symbolic identification. It means that I, as individual, structure myself through that I integrate law, that I function within society through things that I know that are right, that are wrong, through the entire the entire realm of discourses of the it's a certain orientation of who I am within the realm of the symbolic of the discourses, and especially of what is right and what is wrong, what I may do, I may not do, and so on. And with pathological narcissism, this identification fails, because the narcissist, as we know for Freud, in primary narcissism, the child has two first objects of love, of desire. One is mother, and the other is himself in this autoerotic stage. But in the normal development of human being, we come to the object love. So we should be able to transfer transfer this first balloon of being connected to mother and to yourself, to the external object, to someone else, no, to the other. And if this, and this of course is the figure of father, the figure of law, of moral law, of society, and so on. And if this, with narcissists, this never happens. This transition never happens. It's a failure in this transition. It stays oriented into the desire stays oriented on oneself. No? So because the symbolic identification fails, what one is left with is the imaginary identification. So the pathological narcissist, he doesn't understand what are the social rules. He doesn't understand what is good and what is wrong and what is right, what is good, what is bad, and so on. This is just for him. He of course adapts to this, but it's only a game that he plays. An author, like rules are outside. He didn't integrate them. They are not their own beliefs. His own beliefs, no, his or her own beliefs, no, and he stays. He's only left with this imaginary identification, and this is the only thing that he can feel, that this is himself, and that's why he really builds up on this persona, on this mask, because this is the only thing that he can rely on. And then we have this superego thing, which is another player in the game. No? So we have this ideal ego. This is our image. This is our imaginary identification. Then we have ego ideal. This is our symbolic identification. And the big other is actually the functioning within the realm of ego ideal. But then we have this superego. This is a sort of Lacanian distinction, not Freudian, but superego is the one that that functions on a very basic level. It's irrational on the level of the real, so to say. It's irrational. It's crazy, it's a capricious demand, and it's a demand that one can of course never fulfill, but he feels it. And this is demand of not of the law, but actually of the transgression of the law. It's something that actually wants you to enjoy. Actually, the injunction to enjoy comes from this crazy irrational demand of the superego. So the narcissist then, because he lacks the symbolic identification, he is caught into this identification through his image and through this irrational demand of the superego, which pushes him into this demand of enjoyment, and to which he responds in a sense. He responds in a sense. So the narcissist actually it lacks actually any sort of connection to the other, any sort of empathy, any sort of love. He just cannot.
There's two things I want to say about this.
Well,
this is a really interesting notion that the ideal ego is related to the imaginary. The ego ideal is related to the symbolic, which means all that's left is the superego is related to the real,
Yeah,
the impossible, unsymbolizable, the traumatic
yeah.
kernel. Um, it makes a lot of sense what you are saying. One way I think of it is that you also talk about the problem of anxiety for the narcissist. And Immanuel Kant said that you must not use human beings for means only, but human being is always an end. And if you made the step that the human being is an end to you, then there's an ego ideal. Because for the pathological narcissist, there's only human being as means, and there's only laws as means. There's no inner good that you want to strive towards and sacrifice yourself towards. Um, of course, then you get to this problem of the superego, and well, one thing is that when you do take upon responsibility for yourself, and you say this is my duty because I believe in it, then if you don't take that responsibility, actually you will feel guilty. And Zizek will actually write about how in our day and age, um, compared to Freud's era, on a global kind of scale, of course, this is not always the case, but we've kind of traded guilt for anxiety.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
of this guilt of like do your duty, now it's like you have to enjoy. And of course, in Freud's time, the view was that the id is the primal drives, the superego wants you to keep to the law. Um, so I'm super interested in this, what you said about the real nature of the superego and its irrationality. So can you go deeper into that? The fact that the superego is not what you would think the voice of the parents according to the law. Well, maybe it is some kind of remnant of the voice of the parents in some kind of mythical sense. But
Yeah, it's
like
actually,
enjoy
yeah.
and transgress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually is one thing actually now I forgot his name, sorry. I need to check. So it's actually not my idea. It is it stems from American ego psychology, which was like the American departure from Freudian school in Europe. It's here, yeah, Christopher Lasch, The Culture of Narcissism. He actually goes on this idea of that the pathological narcissist is a product of the deconstruction of the authorities, of the permissive education, and all the stuff. And he claims that superego is he connects it to the demand of the mother, of the yeah. So I don't know how to go more into this. It's for him, it's he goes into this thesis that this is it has an anal function, but for Freud we know that anal function is very much connected to the idea of money, to capitalism, and he claims that that this superego is a fundamental feature of this late bureaucratic society, which which detached. So on the side of ideology, we have this total freedom of the market, and on the side of psychological structure, we have this deconstruction of the authorities. We know that postmodernism and the entire like philosophical scene they demanded deconstruction of the big stories of the eternal truth, of the positions of power, and so on. But this deconstruction is good, of course, to one point. But if it goes to how far can it go? How far can we deconstruct things? And we have come to the point, which is also very crucial, where so in a very authoritative society, for example, still of the bourgeois society, for example, in Freud's time, we have this very strong hierarchy, authorities, and very strong points of identification. So the son should identify with the father and so on. And there would be very little decline from this allowed. But we have come through this ideology of freedom to this point that there are no points of identification. So, for example, a very, very symptomatic thing right now, these days, is that kids, youngsters are looking for their identification, and they have their entire I don't know how to say, palette of options who they are. For example, identification with the gender. This is like, it used to be either you're a man or a woman, and of course the one who couldn't identify had a problem. But now everyone has a problem, because he needs to decide whether he's a transgender with, I don't know, this such inclination, or he's, and okay, maybe a good example would be, so is it easier for the society and for ourselves that for example, we are in a bar, there are many people, so there is, is it easier that there is one toilet, or that there are 15 toilets? So the problem that we encountered in deconstruction of authorities, deconstruction of this gender, the determination, gender identification, the problem is with the man and woman toilets. So now we have this problem with man and woman toilets. So there are some people who wouldn't go to the men's toilet, but they wouldn't go to the woman's toilet. So this is the problem. Now we are getting in the hip bars, we are getting the transgender toilet, no? But is it easier to solve this problem with adding another toilet and another toilet and another toilet, or just to make one toilet for all? No? So, and this is I think, good example for identification. So if we identify with a very general thing, maybe the universal thing, I identify with that I'm, for example, a human being, or that I'm a member of the society. And every member of the society can goes to this toilet. No? If I have to, I make so many efforts to try to find out who I am on the level of the gender. So I would be standing in front of those 10 toilets and trying to really understand to which toilet I need to go. So, and this can go, of course, to infinity, and this is where we are right now. The problem is that I'm focusing, focusing so much on defining who I am that I cannot focus on the other. So this is first, this is time consuming. The other, I will never find the right identification for myself. So it makes us, it's a pandemic of anxiety coming out of this. And the third thing is that I'm prevented to shift things around, and to instead of thinking who I am in terms of gender, just leaving this aside, and for example thinking what I need to do in order for those people to feel better, for example, no? So, and this is the problem, and it's not only the identification with gender, it's also, for example, that now the identification with our own face, for example. This is really, is going to be a huge thing, or already is. So because now that with plastic surgery, and also with this new face apps, we can really transform our faces, which means that we can eternally look for who we are and try to modify our faces to fit with who we wish to be, or who what is our, like, constantly searching for haunting this ideal ego, no? So this is another identification problem, no? But there will be many. There will be maybe am I in the future, am I a machine or am I a human, or which exact mode of the transition between machine and human am I, and so on. So and this is the infinite circle, and the narcissism, of course, gets caught into this, and which means that we are more and more alienated to each other, to ourselves, to each other, and so on. And the society is just disintegrating. The society is a connection of human beings, no? And we are coming to this a very, like, society which is a community of isolated beings, which don't actually have this connection.
Yeah, I think you're making a lot of good points, especially in terms of the fact that because there's this breaking down of like paternal authority, that this is why people are instantiating so much rules about everything. It's because, like, if you have a certain social bond with someone and you know how to relate, you don't have to make up rules about this.
Precisely.
But if there's just anxiety and everyone's preoccupied with, their ideal ego, of course, like, you're gonna make explicit rules. So this is also a huge issue, that this breakdown of this implicit rules, right? And that everything has to become explicit, all the rules, of how to mediate sexuality and sexual relationships, things like this. And of course, this is already always mediated by the capitalistic algorithm. Take all the dating apps, for example. So it wouldn't be so far-fetched if that was taken further. Now, something that you say in the paper is that 55% of facial plastic surgeons say patients requested to look better on social media, not in real life. So indeed, this is where we can see again that it's this failure to really be merged with the ideal ego goes to crazy extents, that the majority of facial plastic surgeons surgery is for this. Now, you also mentioned a quote by Mladen Dolar, which is the following: the image began to serve as that in which desire cannot quite recognize itself as desire and which always betrays it. So the way that I read this is that it's once again something that gets at the impossibility of ever fulfilling a desire, and that this image actually takes the place of a symbolic lack. So on the one side, this lack is structured by the symbolic, as well as its positivization, which would be that very image. So something that you also say here, which I want to connect to that, is the ascendancy of the image, how pervasive it's becoming, promotes this narcissistic exhibitionism, which actuates the reign of the image, reproducing this pathological narcissism, especially in the case of the absence of symbolic identification. And you actually, what was a bit of a surprise to me is that you say that actually perhaps emancipatory potential lies with the voyeuristic side of things, so not the exhibitionistic side of things. Yeah, could you go into what you mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm like, one line through the article is comparison to the old spectacle. I called it the old board spectacle. So the spectacle which was like the spectacle of television, of cinema screens and so on. And the shift that we are brought with in this, I call Spectacle of Instanternity, which is that with the digital virtual, with these interactive screens and so on. Yeah, the thing is that the usual interpretation of this shift is that in the old spectacle, we were passive observers. So just watching the television, and we couldn't do anything, we couldn't interact. And now we are actively engaged into this. Not only observers, but also co-producing the reality of the spectacle, no? Which is well true, but the thing gets a little bit more complex with Freud's elaboration on activity and passivity. The thing for Freud is that the ambivalence of voyeurism and exhibitionism is determined by two things. One is activity and passivity, which means that in case of scopic drive, I'm active when I'm actively looking, and so where I'm actually engaged in this Zeigelust, Schaulust, the desire to see, to watch. So voyeurist is has the active part of the drive, while the passive is the to be looked at, the one who desires to be looked at. This is Zeigelust, the desire to show yourselves, to. So the thing here is that, of course, in the physical posture or action, it looks like the voyeur is very passive. He's very passive because he sits, he looks. And the voyeur, the exhibitionist, is very active because he performs, he dresses up, he makes his masks, and so on. But from the viewpoint of the very aim of the drive, voyeurist is active because he's looking, and the exhibitionist is passive because he wants to be looked at. No, so and as we see, voyeurist is concentrated on the other, on the other subject, on another person. While of course, he uses the other person for his own desire, and the exhibitionist as well. No? But he wants this other person to look at him, to activate his gaze towards him. No? So so because the digital virtual at this point where we are now is caught in this loop of pathological narcissism, exhibitionism, auto-modeling of subjectivity, of showing yourself to the other. I think this is only an assumption because I need to research more into it. But I think the very structure of voyeurist desire, which is the active one, not the passive one, could enable him to break this vicious circle of the self-referentiality on the level of the image, which is narcissistic and so on. And I presume this might, because internet as such is not what internet in the very idea, is not what we got from internet right now. So at the beginning, the internet, the idea of internet, we know it was very social, very social thing. And I think that think of also very how to say egalitarian economy, egalitarian structure, and I also assume the hypertext, so the algorithms and everything, how internet is written, now is enslaved or serves, at this point, serves this reproduction of images, the vicious circle of narcissism, but it wouldn't be necessarily so. And here we've got this, of course, capitalistic machine, which is very much connected to the thing, to why. I mean, the capitalistic machine, the machine of the injunction to joy, the machine of the triggering of desire and so on. This machine is the one that brought internet to the point where we are now. So it's abuse. I think it's abuse of internet for the purposes of consumerism, while internet as such, the level of the hypertext could develop into totally different direction, into very, very much more, I don't know, communist, egalitarian, democratic, and not narcissistic. Now, so here is maybe so I see the potential of the wire, maybe the one who is looking, who is active in looking, active also in changing what he wants to see and so on. Following this, so the very structure of his desire is maybe has this emancipatory potential.
Right. Yeah. What it makes me think of is that, you know, let's say you go on the internet just to show yourself off and to want people to see you from the point at which you see them. Like this, just to carry out exhibitionism all the time, it obviously goes nowhere. It's like you said, the self-referential cycle, which just reproduces the reign of the image, just keeps going. Whereas as a voyeur, you can decide like, hey, I don't actually like this anymore, and you jump onto another thing, right? And this is this metonymic nature of desire. So Yeah, that's it would be interesting to see where that goes, and this is probably a societal process that takes at least decades to play itself out, right? It's not like we're gonna have our answer very
Yeah,
quickly.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but on the other hand, the technology develops so quickly that,
Yeah.
you know what, I don't know, things that we, like, for example, protocols that were written for the protection of the AI like 2 months ago are not not applicable to the reality of the AI now, for example.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I think one thing that is very like really happening is that the reality is overrunning our thought. I mean, we are like, even I myself see that like a research done could be like beyond time very quickly, even before it gets published or something.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. 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 Do you have any final concluding things you want to say? We're coming up against the end here.
Yeah. I was one thing. Yeah, I wanted to say. I was thinking of a lot is so connected to this problem of identification. The other thing, which is totally problematic, is of course the political correctness. So it goes together. And as you said, those making up rules, because we don't have the inner like sense of what is good and right, or what is right, in a sense of the responsibility and so on. So making up rules is very much connected to also to political correctness. Rules on the level, like political correctness is exactly this: rules imposed from the outside, which go to absurd details, absurd levels. For example, professor could be like professor in the US can be fired because there are examples, or prevented, for example, from reading Fanon's quote, who mentions nigger, for example, no? So where is this? What I wanted to say is that all those rules imposed from the outside is actually total ideological autocracy that we are making up for ourselves. No? So and this, of course, ultimately brings us to the very like primitive position of each one against each one. No, each one is a singular cell, and each one can sue another person because he said a word that was wrong. But I mean, I don't know if you heard. I recently heard about these trigger warnings that they have. For example, in UK and in America. So before the lecture, a professor needs to give a trigger warning that this will be a lecture may contain, I don't know, sexual content or content connected to suicide or to murder. So that because the students claim that they are hurt because of a specific content. So to prevent that professor could be sued because this person was hurt because the professor was talking about murder. So they are making these trigger warnings. But this is, of course, again, going to absurd. So to which point are you going to? So I can be, for example, I can sue you because you are mentioning, I don't know, green window, because this reminds me of something and this hurts me, So yeah, maybe for the very end, I was thinking of a joke to continue to like finish in this because Yugoslavian jokes, as you realize through Zizek, are very No, it's you know what, Yugoslavian humor really pressures this political correctness. No, so this one goes to the. I think this one catches the problem with this identity ashtray and also the political correctness. And maybe I can tell you it's so. So we have Mujo, who is a Bosnian guy who's a player in most of the Bosnian jokes. Mujo and an African, a nigger, a black man, and Japanese.
That's not part of the joke, I hope.
This is part of the joke.
I'm joking.
They are sharing an apartment.
Yeah.
And they all apply for the same job. So they have these interviews for the job. And first go the black man, and he doesn't get a job because they say he's a black man, he cannot get a job. The other goes the Japanese, and they also resign him because he's yellow, he cannot get a job. And then goes Mujo, and the thing is that Mujo asks his roommates to wake him up in the morning, not to be late for the interview, and because of the jealousy, the African guy and the Japanese put something on Mujo's face, some color, some black color, that he would look black, no?
Yeah.
So he comes to this interview, and the officers they say to him, no, you cannot get a job. You're black. And he says, no, I'm white. And then they give him the mirror, and he looks at himself and he says, oh, this stupid Japanese, he must have woken up the African guy instead of me.
Yeah. Okay. So
you see, it's this identification thing, no?
Yeah. I see it. Yeah. Thanks for this. All right. Yeah, is there also anywhere where people can check out your work? I will put a link for everyone to read your paper in the description.
Yeah, the paper is on this Filozofski Vestek. You took it from there, I think.
Yeah.
This is the. Otherwise, yeah, I have a webpage, and I'm updating it. Like, I think I put this on. Otherwise, also academia, yeah.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. Thank you so much for joining, and have a good evening, everyone.